I don't necessarily think you have to go through film school. I think now, you know, in 2009, there's so many tools out there that are accessible. Even if you're not buying them, they're out there in your community and you can get your hands on them. And there's nothing better to sort of get you closer to where you're going to get to than by using that stuff and experimenting and trying things out, and to have that stuff in your hand and working on it. I think that's the best path possible.
For the first time, you can build a reel without having to hire a crew and money and big expensive equipment and learning how to expose negative and things like that. You just have to start off as a loader and work your way up over 20 years.
More specifically, what would you guys suggest people do then to become a successful DP?
Where do you live? I mean, the question is, it's different in every geographic place. So the first question, where do you live? And do you want it badly enough to pull up your roots and change where you live in a place with a bigger market? That's the first question. Are you committed? And it's the right time to do that. If you don't have a reel and don't have everything going in, that could be a long haul, because
the internet sort of bridges that gap, though, I think, as well nowadays, right? Because there's stuff on the web that I'll just see something that, and you know, I've never heard of the guy. He'll come from some crazy small country somewhere, and you see it and you go, well, there you go, man.
This guy probably never would have been discovered or had been seen by the right people before the internet.
Exposure, the opportunity to get his work out there.
This new world is amazing in that respect, but we're also having to wade through a lot of crap too.
Exposure on the internet, on YouTube or Vimeo or something like that, does that lead to jobs?
Sometimes it can do. Yeah. Sometimes it can do. I mean, for me, I would say probably 95% of work I've got over the past 18 months has been totally generated from my work being on the internet.
Wow.
I think it's going to happen more and more as well.
Yeah.
So just to contrast a little bit, sorry, you know, back, let's say in the 90s and before that, a traditional path would be perhaps going to film school, maybe not, but paying your dues in...
There weren't a lot of film schools back there.
Right.
I was invited into the American Society of Cinematographers in 1991. Around that time, I took a little poll. We had, I think, 65 ASC cinematographers at a meeting, and I said, how many came up through the ranks, you know, operator, you know, first assistant operator and all that, and how many a different way? And it was half and half. And it kind of dispelled the notion, because the traditional way is, if you really want to learn your craft, it was an apprenticeship craft, you got on the set, you loaded magazines, blah, blah, blah. And that was true for maybe half of the ASC cinematographers in 1991. A lot of people came up through still photography, commercials. I came up through little industrials and documentaries until I had a sequence good enough to get me a job. Film schools were not as big a deal. So just doing great work and then getting it seen is certainly one way to do it. And generally that goes through commercials or music videos, or did. I mean, I'm not, trust me, I'm not the final, I'm not that informed of what happens right now at the cutting edge. But getting your work shown, and the promotion system on the big union things still works. You move somebody up, you know, but it just takes a lot of years. Right. And now the film schools.
What about the networking before social networking on the internet? I mean,
I'm the wrong guy to ask.
Yeah.
I mean, I
got a feeling that
I didn't join Facebook or anything because.
No, I'm talking about pre-internet. In other words, is it who you knew back then? Besides
who you knew can certainly help. And we have a phrase in Hollywood: when did you get your break, or where did you get your break? And your break, because it's not only that you be worthy and know it, is that someone trusts you. Right. Very often, a friend. I got a great set of wilderness commercials from a buddy of mine that could have picked 1,000 cinematographers with more experience, but I was his buddy and he trusted me. Yeah. And that work got me a great invitation to join a house with some very notable cinematographers. So Conrad Hall and Haskell Wexler. So I mean, the breaks work like that.
Right. And I think that's still in play, because certainly that's your relationships is what got you partly to where you are, besides
without a doubt. Yeah, no, without a doubt. Yeah, I mean, you need opportunities to sort of bring it to the next level.
Is it easier now to become a success?
I think it's got to be easier for people to get in, because before you would have talented people that would just never get a shot. And unfortunately, you would never get an opportunity to sort of experience what they were doing, and they would be stuck doing whatever it was, you know, like working as a clerk or whatever. Yeah. But now at least they've got that opportunity, and hopefully it gets out there, it clicks with people, and you know, who knows what can happen.
It gets noticed.
But the numbers are huge. I mean, the number of people competing. I mean, much more than in.
It is, but they get noticed because, as we said before, the good stuff floats to the top. And it's a way of getting seen, whereas before the internet, how was your stuff going to get seen unless you knew somebody to send stuff to? It's almost like if you could picture sort of like American Idol or something like that, where, you know, there's probably thousands of great singers in the States, but unless they go on that show or have that lucky break, nobody's going to actually hear them.
Yeah.
With things like, you know, Vimeo and things like that, people who've got talent, who we don't know about, can make their own stuff. It gets on there, it gets picked up, and people go, wow, this guy's great. And not necessarily they're going to end up making a feature out of it, but at least they get noticed, and perhaps that's...
They're out of their bedroom sort of thing. They're actually
Yeah.
there on a
It's
stage.
a way of opening up, and it's a very easy way of opening up. If you've got the talent and get your stuff out there, the great thing is people are out there looking at all this stuff that gets put on the internet. There are people who spend all day just looking at that, and they will send links.
Critics?
And it's viral.
How did you guys pick the shows that you wanted to look at on Critics?
A lot of with Critics, it was a lot of stuff that was recommended by friends, stuff that I saw myself. There's no way I could have gone on to like Vimeo and found all the good stuff.
Just scanning through everything.
It's impossible. You have to go down to recommendations, and when I find something good on there that's had 20 views in the past 6 months, I will send it to everybody I know and say, you've got to watch it.
It's so exciting too because you want to bounce it around.
Potential.
The viral, that's the thing, viral on the internet is an incredibly powerful tool. You can, you know, literally, you can go from having 20 views to 20,000 views in a couple of days because it gets picked up and then circulated around, and suddenly everybody knows your work.
When I was learning, there was an ethic that you kept the cinematography invisible on a feature film so that people would not be distracted from the story. You covered all your moves, you didn't show a move. It made the light always look natural for a long time. I just thought this was just natural light that they did, and that you hide your work, and it was considered an ethical thing that you were not competing with the actors and the story. And that was like in ethics, you grew up.
Like rock star journalism sort of thing. Rock star journalism, where the journalist sort of injects his personality into the piece.
So doesn't competing on the internet for more people looking at that, doesn't that go against the ethic of trying to work in such a way that you're transparent and that people just see the drama through you rather than you injecting yourself into that? And what do you feel about that?
I don't think you're putting yourself out there to, you know, the stuff that I would put out there is things that I'm not doing it to compete with anybody. I'm doing it because it's something that I've created and I love. And so I put it out there, and I think a lot of people would be the same. I mean, sure, there's competition, but there's competition in every single avenue of life. Yeah. And I don't think there's any real difference in this.
But there's shock value cinematography. People who are just doing things for wild, but then there are great stuff, things out there that are just beautifully shot and that lend itself to telling the story and are not to shock you or catch your attention just for the cinematography of it. So there's a mix of everything.
And there's enough of those around, and people sophisticated enough that they can also rise to the...
There's that whole range that's out there, I think, for sure.
I mean, it can also be quite depressing at times when you look at some of the films on there which have enormous amounts of views, and you go and look at it and go, why? Because, you know, we say that there is the cream to the crop does rise, the cream does rise to the top, but it doesn't always happen that way, because there are some of the highest rated ones on there really are a bit sort of like, why?
It doesn't connect with you personally.
No, and the stuff which, you know, you see and it's like nobody's watching it, and you're like, how? And this is like a year old or something. Like, how hasn't somebody not seen this? Yeah. It's amazing. Yeah. I mean, when we were going through Critics, we were like looking at some of the views on some of the films, and we were like, how can this have not been seen by anybody? And hopefully, and that was hopefully what we were trying to do with the show, was actually like at least show some stuff that people hadn't seen. I mean, yeah, it's all very well and good just like showing, you know, the most popular stuff, but we mixed it up, and we wanted to really introduce some really talented filmmakers out there who really weren't getting the exposure they deserve, because it needs people to push it. Everything needs pushing, because you can push yourself as much as you can, but you need other people to see it and push it for you.
And then the question is connoisseurmanship, whether the most refined, the best work is easily identifiable by other cinematographers and experts, but whether the mass of people get it, or they feel it, or they recognize it. In cultures which are bombarded with so much stuff and quick cuts and everything else like that, whether, I mean, it's a tricky question.
Yeah.
You said earlier that there was not that many film schools before. There were the highly acclaimed ones, of course. But nowadays, it seems like every school that's out there has some sort of a film program.
Yeah.
Are they selling the dream, not really, you know, letting these kids know what the realities are?
the odds are.
Yeah, the odds really is the case here.
I mean, I've had that. I was interviewed by this girl who was at a film school in Cambridge. You know, it was a college, but it wasn't like a recognised film school, but it had a film class.
But now the gear's so cheap, they're all buying this stuff,
but
claiming they have a film.
Bit of an industry now.
She interviewed me, and she wanted to know. One of the questions she asked me, which just kind of sort of like just left me a bit speechless, was, so how much work out there is there for a freelance? And I went, what do you mean? And she went, well, how much work is out there for a freelance director? I said, what, you mean coming out of film school as a freelance director? And she went, yeah, well, probably not a lot, to be honest with you, because you don't have any experience. You're not going to just like come out of film school and suddenly you're going to be given a commercial, you're going to be given a feature. It's not going to happen that way. No. And she was shocked. And that's what worried me the most was the fact is they're not even taught the reality at a lot of these places. That the fact is that, you're going to be taught a lot of great disciplines, you're going to be taught a lot of great skills in these places, but not necessarily is going to get you that foot up into actually getting paid to do this. And it's going to be difficult for these people who are all coming out of these film schools thinking, I'm going to be a director. Right. And they come out and they're like, they're not.
I think they're doing a little disservice to them by not really sort of cluing them in. But again, on the other hand, if they tell them the realities, they might not jump into that program and spend the money on that school. So it's,
but okay, almost every time I've taught in a new place, I've reminded them, I think there are about 900 union directors of photography in local 600 in the United States, okay? Certainly not all of them are making a decent living, and some of them are just scraping by and one thing or another, all that. There are probably at least 3 times as many film schools as there are directors of photography. So if each film school, say, graduates 3 directors of photography a year over 10 years, that is something like 90 graduate directors of photography for each job. I mean, it's like, so you got to know the odds are something like 100 to 1, and that is important for you to know where you're dedicating your life. If you've got enough passion, and you say, I don't care, it's what I want to do, great. Then that's automatically, puts you in a position. Having said that, at least at AFI, which is not a school where people lecture you about film. It's a school where 28 directors of photography, 28 directors, 28 producers, 28 writers, 14 editors, 14 production designers get together and make a whole bunch of films and Roundy Robin and all this, and and the films are on pretty high level, and they got as a resource, all the Hollywood pros come in and help out and lecture. We practice on Titan cranes, and I bring in 8 Steadicam operators. Everybody gets 1-to-1 Steadicam things. They do the Garfield mounts. They do the Alien Revolution. I mean, it goes really deep.
Very real world.
Very real, and it's the intensity of Navy SEALs. They work like 7 weeks at a time with at 7-day weeks, and all this. And it's a really intensive 2-year thing after you're already good, after your reel's already good.
Is film school an absolute? I don't think so.
No. Yeah. I didn't go there, so how could it be an absolute?
Okay.
I didn't go to film school, but 20 years ago, when it got to the point where I finished my school, there weren't that many film schools.
Right.
So,
but you still paid your dues somehow, and
but
that has to be done no matter what.
Had I graduated or had I done my A-levels today, I would be looking at film school. The idea of spending 3 years doing that is a very appealing prospect.
How could you not? Film school is a very obvious thing for a lot of youth, you know what I mean? That's fun and
discipline and
exciting.
Everybody around you who's got the same passion as you is a very attractive prospect. Even if it, at the end of the day, after 3 years, it's not going to get you any paid jobs. It's still must be a wonderful way to spend 3 years, without a doubt.
Well, waiter, can we have another glass of a bottle of red wine? We're ready.
I think we might have to go on. Have
Have
you polished off the wine?
No, I'm only one. You're not drinking that one.
I'm sipping it.
Not even eating your food. We've loved our food. Look at you guys. Do you want to lick the plate if you want?
I think the biggest thing for film school, because I actually have a problem with film school, which is funny because I went there. But my issue is when the film school, I want to know what the motivation is. Like, did it start up to educate kids and give them an arena to try things out? And
you got to look at the school. A lot of these are just adding these programs because they know they're going to get kids that have.
Is it a business or is it an educational sort of?
Now, having said that, though, it still may then find or help discover kids who never would have gotten the opportunity because it's probably less expensive than an AFI or some other traditional film school, and help them get noticed.